Tell me, when did you first think about becoming an artist, a professional artist?
A professional artist? Well, I guess I kind of always thought about becoming, that's sort of the dream, is when you realize that that's a thing you can be. And if it is something you like to do, you like to draw or whatever, and to hear that you can have that as a job, I think that right away I thought, well, that's how do you beat that? If you can have that as a job, that's what you should shoot for. So pretty young. I think probably I really started to. I have an older brother that's also an artist, and so I think when I was real young, I was sort of always not in his shadow, but I was always sort of had the thought that, well, that's his thing. He's the artist. But actually, our father is an artist as well. And so I think it was a little late to start, actually. I wasn't really until I was probably about 13, 14, where I really started to spend a lot of time drawing, and that was probably at the age where I really thought about that as being, something you could do and be.
Was it just a general sense of being an artist, or was it specifically, did you have like an eye towards animation or commercial illustration?
Yeah, I think so. I think illustration, drawing, cartooning, that kind of stuff. I was a huge fan of, like most kids my age and from my generation, of Mad Magazine. And so whatever that meant, you know what I mean? Like I didn't know if I don't think I could have probably put it into words then, but something like that. And not long after that, I sort of became really aware of design, I guess graphic design, and that was a career as well, that was a job you could have. And there was something always, even very young, that appealed to me about design. So I think those two things in concert, thinking, well, I like both of these things. Is there a way that I could, one of these things I think will work out. So.
Tell me about going to Art Center. You were already like a working artist before you went to Art Center, correct?
Yeah, I was actually. I was. It wasn't a great career, but yeah, I was working in the field before I went, and I knew that I was living in Las Vegas at the time. I had sort of grown up in Las Vegas and then left, and then come back and was working as a designer, and I knew that if I was going to stay in Las Vegas, that the kind of work that I wanted to do wasn't really attainable there. It was the stuff that we were doing was very sort of, I guess you would call it like mid-tier, like really broad, very kind of easy, not much sophistication or edge or any sort of excitement to it. It was just very broad and basic. That was about the best you could hope for. And I was sort of very quickly bored with that. And I knew that if I wanted to go somewhere past that I was going to need to leave, and I was going to need more tools than I had at that point. And so my brother was in Art Center at the time. And so I applied, and I put a portfolio together, and I went down and I said, I presented you have an entrance. Before you even apply, you have like a meeting with the chair, and I had a meeting, and they looked at my portfolio and they said, well, yeah, I think you could, I think you should submit your portfolio, but you could sort of go into any, do you want to go into design, illustration, or I should maybe advertising. There was a few things that they listed at the time, and I said, well, yeah, all of those things are appealing to me. I said, but for me, I don't have any money, so where are the scholarships? And she said, oh, well, graphic design has by far the largest pool of money to get scholarships for. And so for me, then that was the deciding factor. So I entered Art Center as a graphic design student as opposed to illustration or anything else.
Did you get out of Art Center what you expected to get out of Art Center?
I did, yeah. I hear a lot of, so many of my peers and stuff had such horrible experiences in art school. At least that's what I hear, both firsthand and secondhand from people. But for me, it was wonderful, it was maybe a bit of a different experience for me. I was somebody that dropped out of high school. So I'm somebody that didn't have that traditional sort of high school, college transition, So I dropped out of high school at 16, took my GED, worked in the field, went into the arts, worked there for a long time. And I didn't go to Art Center until I was 24, 25, which at that time was pretty standard. I think the entering student, the average age of the entering students was like 24, 25. I think in my entering class there was one person that was coming directly from high school. Everybody else was older. Most of them were working on a second degree. They had gone to school, got a degree in something they decided they didn't want to do, and then were going back to Art Center. So for me, it was wonderful, and I think a lot of that was coming, being a little bit older and knowing sort of what I wanted out of it, knowing what it was going to take me, what I was going to have to commit to, what I was going to have to bring to it, and I think I was just it was the right place at the right time and the right circumstances for me, and I got a tremendous amount out of it. It was completely life-changing for me. It was really. But like I said, I was in the right place. I was ready to work hard. I was ready to, and I was I was with my wife, who's my wife now, and so I didn't have any sort of, relationship distractions. I wasn't, I knew what I wanted and what I was going to have to do to get it, and it was awesome. There was amazing teachers at the time. Bern Hogarth was there. Roland Young was an instructor, and it was just. There was so many amazing resources there that to me it was just it was fantastic. I loved it. When you start at Art Center, you have foundation classes. So a lot of the majors start off together. So you'll be in classes your first couple of terms at least. You'll be in with graphic designers, advertising, illustration, some fine art or maybe all fine art. So you sort of start off together because there's certain classes that's foundation. So it's stuff that's applicable and important to all of these different disciplines. But once I got past, so as a graphic designer, you take things like, things that are specific to design. There's things like introduction to advertising, which I don't think illustration and those people take. Maybe they do, but you do take perspective, life drawing. A few of that, basically sort of some basic academic stuff like art history, I think. Some stuff that, like I said, is foundational and applicable to all disciplines. And then I think it's maybe at fourth term that you start to really starts to focus on your major, so they become more your classes become more design centric as a designer and, drawing and so forth as an illustrator, what have you. And then so once I got my foundation stuff out of the way, and then I think it's about sixth term, so sixth, seventh, and eighth term, when you can really open up and sort of you've gotten all your foundation stuff, you've gotten your major specific stuff out of the way, and then you get to open up for some electives. And all the electives that I ended up taking were illustration kind of stuff. Illustration, they had just started at that time what later became, well at that time was entertainment design. I think it was the first or second term that they had ever offered it. And to me that sounded fantastic. I mean, to me it was everything. It was design, it was illustration, it was film, it was all this stuff together, and I thought, oh, that's fantastic. So all of my electives were always sort of illustration-based stuff, animation, anything that had stuff to do with that. In fact, it was a problem. I remember going in a meeting with my head of my department at the time, and she said that. She goes, "Oh, you're gonna get out of this school, and you're gonna have a portfolio that's all over the place." And I said, "I'm willing to do that. I'm here not to put a portfolio together, but to get as much as I can out of this." That's for me what it really was. Is once again saying you have all these resources there. Why would you not take advantage of it? She was right in a lot of ways. I did get a portfolio, and when I came out, I did have a portfolio that wasn't nearly as focused as some of my peers that I was graduating with. But it turned out fine because I almost immediately went into animation. So graphic design major with most of my focus in illustration. I ended up in animation out of school. So I don't know what that says.